retire on. No, the main
I tend to think that maybe even more, as important or even more important than the personal savings is how we build cities. And Malaysian cities have been growing a lot, like many cities around the world, and are going to continue growing in the next 30 or 40 years. The aging population is also not an Asian thing, it's worldwide.
Yeah.
200 years ago, in the history of humanity, up to 200 years ago, there was not one single country that had a life expectancy more than 45. None. Today, we don't have any country with a life expectancy less than 45. So all the countries have increased. If we had been born in Malaysia 100 years ago, the life expectancy was 34. Today, it's more than 75. And we tend to look at this as a problem, when actually I think it's fantastic, it's magnificent. We have more time to be with our children, with our grandchildren. I think that we need to change our mindsets, that when the people retire in Malaysia or in the US or in Australia or in Canada, I live in Canada, originally I'm from Colombia, we cross people out as if they had died, except that they got 10, 20, 30 years left. And they are healthier and wealthier and more active and more productive than any time in history. But we need, this is probably the biggest waste of resource that we have. We should tap the older adults. Could be tutoring children in the schools. They could be organizing Tai Chi in the parks. They could be doing volunteer work for the government. They could be doing our universities. At least 25% of the courses should be for older adults. People retire and they are hungry to learn. They want to learn about history, about philosophy, about cooking, about plants, about things. So, on the other hand, we need to create cities that are friendly to older adults. We need, and in the talk, that we should evaluate cities by how well the cities treat. And you mentioned the most vulnerable people. Who are the most vulnerable? The children, the older adults, the poor, and the handicapped. And the older adults, our cities are really horrible for older adults. For example, I've been around in Kuala Lumpur, at least in maybe 80 kilometers. I haven't seen a nice sidewalk, 100 meters of sidewalk anywhere. I've gone to some of the wealthiest neighborhoods, some of the poorest neighborhoods, and that is a basic element. We were created as pedestrians, just like the birds fly or the fish swim, we walk. That's one of the things that you can do in the Netherlands or in Denmark. People walk.
Absolutely.
Older adults cannot walk here.
Yeah.
Older adults, more than 40% of the people in Copenhagen ride their bicycle as the mode of mobility. More than 40. Here, not even 1%. And Copenhagen is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Same thing in Amsterdam, more 40%. And they're not even happy with 41%. The people here in Malaysia, the people that have a car, are spending more than $1 out of $4 on mobility. Between 25 and 35% of their income goes into mobility. There is nothing that the government could do to improve the financial situation of people more than allowing households to downsize from 2 cars to 1 or from 1 to 0.
Yes.
It would be like winning the lottery, except that it not be 1 in 10 million, but it be 1 in 1, each family. But there is such a mentality that is cars. And people say, oh, we don't have money. There is tons of money. I've seen highways are widening, you are building elevated ones, and so it's an issue of priorities. For example, parks. You mentioned also the issue of the social context. One of the big concerns of older adults is isolation, but we don't have parks. We need to have good quality parks within walking distance of everybody. Any citizen should have a nice park within 500 meters of their home, because in those parks, that's where we're going to develop the sense of belonging. That's where we're going to develop also solidarity, and we're going to help each other. That's where we're going to meet the parents and the grandparents of our children and grandchildren. So I think that we need to build cities differently, and I think that is one of the big areas where Kuala Lumpur and many Asian cities are failing. And I think that we need to develop a sense of urgency, because also this huge growth of the population is going to be only for 30 or 40 years. Around the world, the population is going to level off around 2050, 2060. because the rate of growth is now is very, the fertility rate is very low. But since there are so many more children, it's still gonna grow. Imagine the population in cities. One last comment to put things into context. 100 years ago, in 1900, we had 200 million people living in cities. Today, we got 3.5 billion living in cities. In 35 years, we're going to have 7 billion. So we're going to have to build in the next 35 years as many cities as we have done in the history of humanity. But not only do we have to create great cities for the new people, also we need to improve the cities that we have today. Today, we have 1.2 billion people without access to clean water. We have 1 out of 3 people don't even have sanitation. So I think that in many ways, the well-being of the older adults is part of it is their own savings. But just as important is of the well-being of the older adults is their community, is the sidewalk, is the crosswalk, is the small neighborhood park, is all of these things, because even the poorest people, when the poor people have a small flat that they call here 40 square meters, you don't live there, you sleep there, you live outside. So you need an even better sidewalk than the rich people. You need a better bikeway, you need a better park, you need a better connection to public transit. And also you need to change the status. For example, here at your company, it's mandatory to wear a tie. The weather here is magnificent all year round, 30 degrees. If we want people to walk or bike or take public transit, why are we forcing people to wear? If people love ties, wear a tie. But if they don't want to, they should be able to dress up. So even those simple things, it's about changing that mindset. If they see the CEO taking public transit, if they see the CEO coming down for lunch and walking to the restaurant, so part of this is about that change of mindset that I think we might do even more for the well-being of people than their own personal savings.